Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, good morning, everybody. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor. Today, sitting alongside me is Patrice Onwuka. Hello, Patrice.
Happy Friday, Andrew.
Is it? Yes. Is it really a happy Friday, Patrice?
Every
it is Friday.
There's energy and excitement about the weekend.
Yes. I agree with you there. I think this is one of those weeks, something where it is really about, God, thank goodness this week is over, because it's been a heck of a week, hasn't it been? We'll get to this in a second. And, it's really, the hits just keep on coming, as they say. We've got a great show today. By the way, it is 5:07 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news. We got a jam-packed show, as we do always. We've got Juan Pablo Segura joining us. He's running for the Virginia Senate in District 31. We're going to talk with him about what's going on with his opponent and the so-called fake culture war. We've got Julie Donaldson joining us. I wasn't aware the Washington Commanders were still playing football. I mean, listen, I know they got a game this weekend, but
well, let's hope they turn it around. Let's hope they have turned it around.
They're overdue, certainly. We'll be talking with Julie about that. John Solomon is going to join us as well to talk about what's going on Capitol Hill, as well as Brett Baer, who's got a new book and he interviewed Trump, and we're going to talk to him about all of those things, to say the least. But this is what I mean in terms of the hits just keep on coming. We got inflation news yesterday, and forecasters were hoping that inflation, which again is the increase in prices overall, right? Prices are continuing to go up. Forecasters are hoping that was going to ebb a little bit more, and it didn't, Patrice, did it? What do we know about what happened?
No. So the headline number is that inflation stayed the same for another month at 3.7%.
Right.
Now, let's not forget that inflation had been, decelerating, meaning not rising as quickly for almost about a year, which was good news, from a high of 9.1% in June of last year. Then it ticked up last month to 3.7% and stayed the same. When you dig a little deeper, there are some areas to be, okay, this is good, where food prices, for example, slowing. They're not rising as quickly, but shelter, which accounts for over 50% of the overall inflation, continues to rise. And that is not going to slow down the Fed from probably hiking interest rates again this year.
It's interesting. I've got two kids who are they're on the precipice of launching. One of whom is graduating from college this year. The other one is still in college. But both of them are actually looking for housing right now. We're starting to look for housing for next year, which is incredible to me, because I know that when I was a senior in college, I didn't start looking for a new apartment until after I graduated. But, we're getting ahead of the game here. I always lived on campus in college. But nevertheless, watching the jump up in rental rates has been astounding to me. You talk about these housing prices going up, and it is really, really just incredible. We got this. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I have to laugh because otherwise I would be crying. NBC News reported yesterday, inflation rose just 3.7% in September as a gradual consumer price slowdown resumed after a recent acceleration.
Wait, what?
Yes.
What news reports has she been following?
That would be Orwellian newspeak here. Joe Concha points out inflation rose just 1.3% when Trump left office. Therefore, 3.7% is nearly triple the number it was in January 2021. NBC News also omits here that the 3.7% is hotter than expected. That's the other part of this is you would hope. I mean, listen, I get it. I get that the White House is trying to paint a rosy scenario and that, federal forecasters are supposed to do it. But you would have an expectation that they might be a little bit more on the mark. But they have been wrong on just about every economic prediction, haven't they, Patrice?
Absolutely. When
Yeah.
inflation started to tick up in the spring of 2021, which was right after President Biden sent out those Bidenomics checks, that last round of stimulus checks, they said, oh, this is just kind of like a blip. This is a short-term thing. We heard that inflation was going to be temporary. Inflation was going to be transitory, short-lived. They used every word that they could until finally, when inflation is racking 8-9%, oh, I guess there's a problem. And they still didn't want to admit that a lot of inflation was driven because of the unnecessary, excessive, over nearly $2 trillion of federal spending that had Biden's name on it. So I don't trust them, and they are out of touch with Americans still.
It's out of touch, and they don't understand the relationship between their actions and what happens in the real world.
Yes.
Last month, you guys filed comments in a rulemaking at HHS. We filed comments in a rulemaking on HHS. By the way, Patrice and I both deal with the regulatory world in our other jobs, something which
Yes.
we're both proud of. Because what happened is that HHS put out this rulemaking on subsidies for child care and changing the formula whereby parents would get reimbursed. And as someone pointed out to me, and I helped point out to you guys, and you guys pointed out to the government, you guys meaning IWF, that when you give people free money to support an activity, the folks who can't afford or who don't qualify for those subsidies, that free money, the cost goes up for the rest of them.
Exactly.
And so we all pointed out that the Biden administration was going to be making child care more expensive by subsidizing it. I mean, this is where do you think the disconnect is, or do they not care about the disconnect? They just care about giving out free money.
They don't care about the disconnect because they have economic advisors, but it is a different philosophy of the role and size of government.
Right.
From our perspective, it's about let the private sector come up with as many options as possible. Some will be pricier, some will be cheaper, but everyone will find something. The government, the other competing philosophy, which is what the Biden administration holds, is that no, the government should be providing it, and we'll just subsidize the cost. But as you said, it raises costs for everyone else, and it squeezes out. It displaces a lot of other private options because they simply can't compete if they're not getting the government money on their end. And so you see child care centers close, or you will see child care centers close if there is a new entitlement for child care.
Well, there's that aspect of it, and then there's the unionization aspect of it. The idea, that we're gonna make it harder because we're gonna make anybody who receives these subsidies, make them join, government employee workers unions. I mean, this is across the board. This is not limited there. Yeah, it is. Well, right. We're gonna talk about this later on in the show. I think, which is this idea of the IRS going after more people in the gig economy, or I'm sorry, the Biden administration using the IRS to try to further justify these. Tell you what, we're going to come into this. We're going to talk about the CFPB in a moment, but first it's 5:15 a.m. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives. Here is Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning AM.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
For all your glass, mirror, and shower door needs, visit DullasGlass.com. Dullas Glass. Love your glass.
Later this morning on the Chris Plante Show, it's Friday the 13th. There are calls for worldwide jihad today, and the Democrats still live among us. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It is 5:17 a.m. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor today, joined by Patrice Onwuka. And you tweeted out something this morning. By the way, it's always great. You come in and you're getting ready. We're doing our show prep, and we gotta peel back the curtain. We have a sheet we use to sort of coordinate everything. And Patrice is everything populated because she gets up much earlier than I do, or she does it the night before. But this is the thing that got me. This actually wasn't in your show prep. You tweeted this out at like 4 in the morning about the CFPB and the Justice Department. What are they doing? Tell us what they're doing.
Well, in short, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, another watchdog group, Elizabeth Warren's brainchild, they're teaming up with the Justice Department to to put some new requirements on financial institutions, and it boils down to that they can no longer or should no longer determine whether people can get credit or loans based on their immigration status.
Right.
So, meaning if you are not an illegal immigrant, you could potentially get a loan, get credit. That's really it.
Right.
which seems ridiculous, but that's what they're going. That's what they're
it's
doing.
one of those things where for years there were so many different things that could go into your formula for credit worthiness, right? The credit agencies can use a whole bunch of things to determine. Essentially, let's remember. Well, let's take a step back here, Patrice, for a moment, and let's talk about why you have a credit rating, right? Because people need to be able, people who are going to lend you money, which is essentially what credit is, right? It's the ability to receive money. That they want to assess your ability to pay them back.
Exactly.
Right? And if you are a greater credit risk, then you get charged a higher interest rate. The fee you get charged for this. And we know that the left wants to get rid of this kind of credit rating or the ability of people to assess this. They don't want to deal with risk. This is why they're going after what we would call the short-term high-risk lending industry, the so-called payday lending industry.
Yeah.
But the bottom line here is, okay, you are in some place illegally and engaged in illegal activity, which means that you are always at risk from possibly being sent away from the country and out of the reach of the person who is extending you credit.
Exactly.
It seems to me that this should be, if the credit agency knows that you were engaged in illegal activity, and being in America illegally means you are engaged in illegal activity, they should be able to take this into account in terms of their decision to extend you credit or not, right? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Of course. Well, of course, because you know what? If you skip town and the federal government has no way to track where you're going, if you're an illegal immigrant, for example, and technically you don't have any documentation, you don't have an address, there's no way, and unfortunately, coming through our southern border, there are people who are getting away, and the government has no clue where they are, but they can take out a bank loan. They could take out a personal loan. They could use credit, take out credit cards, get apartments, listen, I understand wanting to establish yourself in the United States, but you don't want to do it in the shadows. You should actually be able to step forward and do that if you come through legally, like myself and many other immigrants. But as you rightly said, these folks can skip town, and the government and the creditors have no way of recouping that money. So that loss is not just a loss that their bottom line eats. That's going to go right back into the fees that they charge people who actually pay their debts, good borrowers who, are trying hard to establish their credit. You are going to be the ones to pay the price for a policy like this. I mean, listen to what the Assistant Attorney General of the Justice Department said. Lenders should not deny people the opportunity to take out a loan to buy a home, build their business, or pursue their financial goal because of unlawful bias without regard to their ability to pay. Well, they have no ability to pay if they're working illegally. They shouldn't be working illegally, and it's not and they're here unlawfully. Listen, Andrew, I get upset about this because legal residents and legal immigrants, we go through hoops to get here and to establish ourselves.
Let me add something to this. The CFPB has very little in the way of accountability, right? This is one of the things we are arguing over right now in Congress about the oversight of it. And I have a real problem with an unaccountable agency, an unaccountable bureaucracy partnering with the Justice Department, the America's great law enforcement power, partnering with the Justice Department to go after people when there's no accountability for the agency. Listen, we got so much more to get to right now. It's 5:22 here on WMA. So maybe it's just me, Patrice, but I think that if you're a federal agency and you have before the Supreme Court right now a case that is that challenges the very basis of the funding, the very basis of your existence, maybe
Yes.
you should not be weighing in so heavily on things that are shattering the economy. I think you would agree with me on this.
I would, because you want to kind of keep things under cover. But you know what? These guys are bombastic.
Right.
Mr. Bombastic, as the singer once said. But this is the thing about the CFPB. For those who don't know what we're talking about,
Right.
They were Elizabeth Warren and those who conspired with her to create this agency. They created the funding source to be outside of congressional oversight. So Congress doesn't greenlight their money, and so that's the key. That's why this is being challenged with the Supreme Court, because there's no accountability for what the CFPB does when the purse strings are not held by Congress, who should be providing that oversight.
Well, it's one of those things where I think you and I have both weighed in on this in the past. It would be one thing if the CFPB were doing things that were not driven by a political agenda or doing things that were objective in nature, but when they're going after, I have challenged them on a number of different avenues, and as we've said, the short-term high-risk lending area, but on auto loans, going after the auto loan industry at a time when buying a car, right? At a time when buying a car was the cheapest that it had been in decades, where you could go in and get essentially a 1% interest loan or even less. They were going after the auto loan industry. They're meddling in areas, and they're making things far, far worse. Listen, we got a lot of stuff coming up. This story you've been talking about, Patrice, the IRS issue and the IRS being further weaponized to go after the administration's labor agenda. We're going to be talking about that. Listen, we got Juan Pablo Segura later on the show, Julie Donaldson, John Solomon, Brett Baer. It's 5:30 here on WMAL.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, hey, everybody. It is 5:37 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news. Happy Friday, Patrice.
Happy Friday, Andrew.
I do use that in my regular life, my normal life. I do channel you and say Happy Friday. I think I believe.
Very good.
I think something. Here's the T-shirt. I believe in Friday. is the way to do it. I think that's
very good.
Instead of a big scarlet A painted on our shirts, I believe in Friday. Listen, we got a great show. We got a great show going on right now. But coming up on the show as well, the next hour we got Juan Pablo Segura, who's running for the Virginia State Senate. We got Julie Donaldson to talk about the Commanders game this weekend. John Solomon and Brett Baer are both going to join us in the 8 a.m. hour to talk about just what's going on. By the way, if you've missed it, this is not what we're going to talk about this segment, but let me just say it right now as a tease. If you're just waking up and you're just tuning in, and you went to bed last night thinking that Steve Scalise was running for Speaker, yeah, he ain't running for Speaker anymore. That sort of came down last night. We're gonna get to this in my ride home where I saw this and I was disbelieving. But we'll get to that in a bit. In the meantime, we've been talking about unaccountable agencies. We've been talking about regulation. I sat down with Wayne Cruz, who Patrice and I were talking about during the break. Wayne Cruz, who deals with regulation at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. And Wayne and I were talking about, Patrice, the whole of government approach to regulation, which is that this administration uses whatever tools in its regulatory quiver to pursue its agenda. And so this administration, they want workers to either be in management or they want them to be employees. We know this is part of their big labor agenda, and now they've enlisted the IRS to in this effort further to buttress their efforts. Talk about what the IRS is doing.
Well, absolutely. So now the IRS just put out a report that Americans did not pay an estimated $688 billion in taxes in their 2021 returns. So, and they're saying that this is the largest shortfall ever. a lot of what they're attributing this drop in tax collections to is both the shift from wage income. So, you're a W-2 employee,
Right,
to gig economy jobs or freelance work. And by the way, there are over 65 million people in this
Right.
country who freelance. Over a third of the workforce freelances in some way. And the IRS is concerned that all of that income is not being accurately reported. And so they're actually kind of giving cover to the Biden administration's change rulemaking that would force a lot more people to be reporting any income they earn online. Selling T-shirts, selling baby clothes, selling furniture. Now you're going to have to report that if it was $600 or more, when before it was $20,000
Right.
and 200 transactions or more. So, listen, the Biden administration is looking for every penny they can find in your house, and they are going to force you to report everything, even if it's not taxable income to do so.
Listen, I know we're going to talk about this later on, but there's a great story now. A member of Congress has dropped a bill saying that in order to pay for the Ukraine war, we should use seized Russian assets. Which sorry, go ahead. I think that's a great idea, right? It's interesting because they're talking about $688 billion in taxes that they're saying is underreported. Now, again, let's remember that this was the left, the Biden administration, who said that they were going to only go after fat cats, right? We want to go after the big time rich tax cheats. This is why we need 88,000 new IRS agents?
IRS agents, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but we saw in their training exercises, but what they were really going after was the landscaper who misreported the income on his truck, and they were showing up with SWAT gear laden agents to go after this guy with his truck. This is, I mean, it really is. By the way, this is part of the reason why I am so thoroughly opposed to moving to an all digital economy and all digital currency. Because in the end, right, this is what they want. They want to track everything you do, every bit of transaction you go through. They at some point in time, listen, they're going to want to make sure that they're the right kinds of transactions, right? You didn't buy the right kind of well, we know this. You didn't buy the right kind of stove. Sorry, go.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that real quick.
Well, absolutely. So this is command and control. The IRS wants. I mean, just the idea of moving to digital currency only means that the government can snoop on every single thing you do. Every single thing you do. And they want to find the ways to ensure that they are taxing and wringing every penny they can out of you. Now, listen, I'm not supportive of tax cheating. I am supportive of taking advantage of every tax, I don't want to call them loopholes, but every tax benefit that's available to you, and to do your taxes smartly, and whether you're giving charitable donations to reduce your taxable income, I'm fine with that. It's not illegal and it's not immoral. In fact, it's actually a very good way of supporting civil society and a just society. What I'm against, though, is weaponizing the IRS against regular people. And no, they're not going after, the mega millionaires. They're going after small, regular people who are just making ends meet. Let's not forget the 2021 tax year, the tax returns. 2021, the economy was returning, but it wasn't fully coming back. And so maybe the drop in tax revenue was because there was a drop in different forms of people making money in different ways, whether it's through W-2s or even through the gig economy. I just think that we don't want to give the IRS more power than they need, because they will weaponize it against their favorite target. And by the way, that tends to be conservatives.
You know something? You raise an excellent point on that. I know we got to go to a break, but I just want to say this. They're using numbers from people's 2021 returns. Mm-hmm. The 2021 returns reflect income from 2020.
Yes, exactly.
And so, hey, maybe, just maybe, when the economy shut down for 8 months, 9 months in 2020, that might produce a $688 billion shortfall in people's taxes. We got so much more to get to. It's 5:44 on WMAL. Here's the thing, Patrice. As I was saying during the break, and by the way, this is the thing. I love hanging out with Patrice because we just start gabbing about stuff.
We're geeking out.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a saw a message from a Facebook friend of mine yesterday. Not
Okay.
a Facebook friend, but one of my oldest and dearest friends putting together a package of emergency supplies to send to Israel.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is the things that we all can do, and so because I don't have a Venmo account, I gave my younger child who does have a Venmo account. I put $100 in her account and said, hey, can you Venmo $100 to my friend so that she can then and it's this idea of by the way, that wasn't a humble brag. I didn't mean to say the number that I sent, but the idea is that my friend, if she gets 10 people to send her $100 to put together a cache of supplies, that the IRS is going to all of a sudden look at her tax returns because they want their due and proper. Like, it's not income if she's turning around to doing something charitable with it. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and here's the challenge.
Yeah.
You have to report all of this as income and then hope the IRS figures out, no, it's actually not supposed to be taxable income. And if they do decide to send you a bill, which they claim they're not going to do, but if they do, then you got to prove the onus is on you to prove that everything that you reported is not in fact taxable. And so it's just the big guy it's like Goliath versus David.
Right.
And we have an administration that is feeding Goliath. But I bet my bet is on David. Because
Right.
when
I would hope.
we as taxpayers, we're the ones that the government should be beholden to, and if we need to cut the head off that giant, so be it.
And it gets down to what astounds me is their willingness to use fudgy numbers. And
Yeah.
that's what's inventing that to sort of pursue their agenda. Because I don't think anybody's going to look at this story and read, okay, 2021 returns. Well, that's the returns filed in 2021 reflected 2020, and that was a year in which we were talking about off air. If you were a musician and all of a sudden you couldn't play anywhere anymore.
Exactly.
That's going to be reflected in your income. And,
You're
anyway,
getting
go ahead.
1099 income,
Right.
exactly, and that would plummet substantially. I mean,
Yes.
and not just musicians, event planners, florists. I mean, anyone who did a lot of in-person events, event planning and execution, those people, their incomes, I mean, they plummeted.
Trees.
And gig work was the only thing that saved a lot of
The
folks.
IRS is coming back. Well, wait a minute. You were a musician in 2019. You made X number of dollars, and then in 2021 you made Y number of dollars. But in 2020 you made $0, or you made 1/4 of what you made in those other 2